Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something before we even begin. What if I told you that everything you've been through, every failure, every wrong turn, every year you feel like you wasted, was not a life sentence, but a launching pad? What if today, right now, in this room, you had the power to close one chapter and open another so different that people who knew you 5 years from now wouldn't recognize the person you're about to become? Stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's not something I read in a book and repeated back to you. It's a way of thinking that has separated the people who merely exist from the people who truly live. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly which one you've been and exactly which one you're capable of becoming. Let's start here. Life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. Most people are waiting for their circumstances to improve before they decide to improve themselves. They say, when things get easier, I'll get serious. But I want you to flip that thinking on its head today. You don't wait for the storm to pass to become a stronger sailor. You become a stronger sailor so the storm doesn't sink you. Resetting your life doesn't mean erasing your past. It means refusing to let your past write your future. Every single one of you has the ability right now, in this moment, to draw a line and say, everything before this was preparation and everything after this is purpose. Now here's where most people get stuck. They confuse a reset with a restart from zero. But you are not starting from zero. You are starting from experience. Every mistake you made taught you something no classroom could. Every disappointment built a callus on your character that softer people don't have. So when I say restart your journey, I don't mean forget what you learned. I mean apply it differently. Take the wisdom of your past and point it toward a future worthy of it. A farmer doesn't burn down the fields because last season's harvest was poor. He studies what went wrong and he plants again, smarter, wiser, more determined. Let's talk about discipline because nothing here works without it. Motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when motivation runs out. And it will run out, I promise you that. The people who transform their lives are not the ones who feel like doing the work every single day. They are the ones who do the work, especially on the days they don't feel like it. Success is not a big dramatic event. It is a handful of simple disciplines practiced every single day that compound over months and years into something that looks from the outside like an overnight miracle. It is not a miracle. It is math. It is consistency multiplied by time. Now let's refocus that mind of yours because your mind is the soil and whatever you plant in it will eventually grow, whether it's flowers or weeds. You cannot expect a new life while feeding it old thoughts. Guard what you allow into your mind as carefully as you'd guard your front door. The books you read, the people you surround yourself with, the conversations you engage in, all of it is either building you up or quietly tearing you down. If you want a different life, you need different inputs. Change your circle, change your reading, change your daily conversation with yourself, and I promise you, your outer world will begin to rearrange itself to match your inner world. And finally, let me leave you with this. None of this matters unless you take action today, not tomorrow, not Monday, not when I feel ready. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is closed by decisions, not by wishes. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You simply need the courage to place your foot on the step in front of you. So here's my challenge to you. Walk out of this room and do one thing, just one, that your future self will thank you for. Because the moment you take that first action, you're no longer dreaming about a reset, you are living it. I want you to sit with that question for a moment because most people never actually ask it of themselves. They drift. They wake up, they go through the motions, they let the calendar turn from January to December and call it another year gone by without ever pausing to ask, did I move or did I just age? There's a massive difference between the two. Aging happens automatically. Growth does not. Growth is a decision made deliberately and defended daily. Stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's not something I read in a book and repeated back to you as secondhand wisdom. It's a way of thinking, a way of seeing your own life that has separated the people who merely exist from the people who truly live. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly which one you've been and exactly which one you're capable of becoming starting today. Here's why this matters so much right now, in this exact moment of your life. Most people are one decision away from a completely different existence, and they don't even know it. They think transformation requires some dramatic event, a health scare, a rock bottom moment, a public failure so humiliating it forces change. But I'm here to tell you, you don't need to hit rock bottom to decide to rise. You can decide today. sitting exactly where you are, in whatever condition your life currently happens to be in, that this is the turning point. Not because something forced it, but because you chose it. And a chosen transformation is always more powerful than a forced one, because nobody can take away a decision you made freely in a moment of clarity with your eyes wide open. Think about the people you admire most. I promise you, if you look closely at their story, there was a moment, a single afternoon, a single conversation, a single sentence someone said to them that became the hinge on which their entire life swung in a new direction. That hinge moment is not reserved for the lucky few. It is available to every person breathing air on this planet, including you, including right now. The only question is whether you will recognize it when it arrives, or whether it will pass you by like a train you didn't realize you were supposed to catch. So here is my invitation to you today. Let this be your hinge moment. Let this be the afternoon you look back on years from now and say, that's when everything changed. Not because my circumstances shifted, but because I did. Because here's the truth nobody tells you loudly enough. Your life is not a rough draft. You don't get to erase the pages already written, but you absolutely get to decide what goes on the next one, and the next one, and the one after that. That is the power sitting in your hands this very moment, whether you feel it or not. I'm not going to waste your time today with vague inspiration and empty motivation that fades by tomorrow afternoon. What I'm going to give you is a way of thinking about your past, your discipline, your mind, and your very next action, that if you actually apply it, will still be working for you 5 years from now, 10 years from now, long after you've forgotten you ever sat in this room. So don't just listen, lean in, because what comes next is the difference between reading about a better life and actually building one. Now here's where most people get stuck. They confuse a reset with a restart from zero. But I need you to hear this clearly. You are not starting from zero. You never were, and you never will be. You are starting from experience. Real, hard-earned, irreplaceable experience that no amount of money could ever buy you and no shortcut could ever replicate. Every mistake you made taught you something no classroom could teach. Every disappointment built a callus on your character that softer, more comfortable people simply do not have. So when I say restart your journey, understand I don't mean forget what you learned. I mean apply it differently. Take the wisdom hiding inside your past and point it like a compass toward a future that's finally worthy of it. Think about how foolish it would be for a farmer to burn down his field because last season's harvest came in poor. He doesn't torch the land in frustration and walk away. He gets down on his knees and he studies the soil. He asks why the yield was weak. Was it the seed? Was it the timing? Was it neglect during the growing season? And then this is the important part. He plants again. Not in some other field, not with some magic new method that promises instant results, but in the same ground, with the same sun rising over it, except now he's smarter. Now he's wiser. Now he's more determined than he was the season before. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what restarting your journey actually looks like. It is not abandonment. It is refinement. I meet so many people who want a clean slate, and what they really mean is they want to skip the lesson. They want the growth without the memory of what caused it. But that's not how life works, and frankly, it's not how it should work. If you erase the memory of the mistake, you erase the very thing that's supposed to protect you from making it again. The pain you carry from your past failures is not a punishment. It is a teacher that stayed in the room after everyone else left. Don't fire that teacher. Listen to it. Let it sharpen you instead of shame you. Here's what I want you to understand about starting from experience, rather than starting from zero. It means your restart can move faster than your first attempt ever did. A person attempting something for the very first time has to learn everything by trial and error, one slow step after another. But you've already paid tuition at the School of Hard Knocks. You already know which relationships drain you and which ones fuel you. You already know which habits quietly sabotage your progress and which ones quietly build it. That knowledge is not baggage weighing you down. That knowledge is fuel sitting in your tank waiting for you to turn the key. So stop apologizing for your past as if it disqualifies you from a better future. Stop treating your setbacks like evidence that you're somehow behind schedule. There is no schedule. There is no universal timeline you're failing to keep pace with. There is only your journey, your pace, and the wisdom you've collected along the way. Wisdom that most people your age haven't even had the courage to earn yet, because earning it required you to fail first. And most people are too afraid of failing to ever get close enough to learn anything from it. You've already paid the price of admission. You already know things about yourself, about people, about resilience that only hardship could have taught you. So don't restart as a beginner. Restart as a veteran who finally understands the terrain. Plant that same field again, smarter, wiser, and more determined than you've ever been in your life, because this time you're not walking in blind. This time you're walking in with everything your past already paid for. Let's talk about discipline, because nothing we've discussed so far works without it. You can have the clearest vision, the most inspiring reset, the most powerful hinge moment of your life, and none of it will matter if discipline doesn't show up to do the daily work. Motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when motivation runs out. And it will run out, I promise you that. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable by nature. They rise, they fall, they disappear entirely on a rainy Tuesday morning when you didn't sleep well and nothing about your goal feels exciting anymore. If you're waiting to feel motivated before you act, you will spend most of your life waiting. The people who transform their lives are not the ones who feel like doing the work every single day. Let that sink in, because it contradicts almost everything the world tells you about success. We're sold this image of people who wake up buzzing with energy, who leap out of bed excited to chase their goals, who never struggle with resistance. That's not real. That's marketing. The real story is far less glamorous and far more admirable. The people who actually transform their lives are the ones who do the work, especially on the days they don't feel like it, especially when the bed is warm and the goal feels far away, especially when nobody is watching and no one would know if they skipped it. Here's why that matters so much. Anyone can perform when the conditions are perfect. When they're rested, inspired, and the stars have aligned. That's not discipline, that's convenience. Discipline is what you do when the conditions are working against you. It's showing up to the gym when you're tired. It's opening the book when the television is calling your name. It's making the sales call when rejection feels heavier than usual. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It simply asks, what did you say you were going to do? And then it does that thing, regardless of the emotional weather that day. Now, I want to correct a myth about success because it's costing people years of their lives. Success is not a big dramatic event. It's not a lightning bolt moment where everything suddenly clicks and your life transforms overnight. Success is a handful of simple disciplines practiced every single day that compound over months and years into something that looks from the outside like an overnight miracle. But it is not a miracle. I want you to remember this clearly. It is math. It is consistency multiplied by time. Nothing mystical about it, nothing magical, just simple actions repeated with stubborn regularity until the results become undeniable. Think about compound interest for a moment. A small amount of money invested consistently over decades grows into a fortune. Not because of one spectacular investment, but because of the quiet, boring, repeated act of adding to it year after year without fail. Your life works exactly the same way. The extra 20 minutes you spend learning something new. The workout you do when you'd rather skip it. The difficult conversation you have instead of avoiding it. None of these actions feel significant in the moment they happen. But stack them for a year, for 5 years, for a decade, and they become the entire architecture of a completely different life. So here's my challenge regarding discipline. Stop asking yourself whether you feel like doing the work. That question is irrelevant. Start asking a different question instead. What did I commit to, and am I willing to keep that commitment today regardless of how I feel? Because the moment you stop negotiating with your motivation and start honoring your discipline, you join a very small, very powerful group of people who don't just dream about a different life. They build it, brick by boring brick, one disciplined day at a time. Now let's refocus that mind of yours, because your mind is the soil, and whatever you plant in it will eventually grow, whether it's flowers or weeds. Nobody gets to choose whether their mind produces a harvest. That part is guaranteed. The only choice you actually have is what you plant and how carefully you tend to it. Most people never think about their mind this way. They treat it like a container that simply absorbs whatever is thrown at it, instead of treating it like a garden that requires deliberate daily cultivation. And that's exactly why so many people wonder why their life never seems to change. They keep planting the same old thoughts and expecting a brand new harvest. You cannot expect a new life while feeding it old thoughts. Read that again, because it's the quiet reason so many resets fail before they even begin. People decide they want a different future, but they keep consuming the same content, keep replaying the same self-doubt, keep rehearsing the same old story about who they are and what they're capable of. And then they're surprised when nothing changes. But nothing changes because nothing changed. The soil is still growing the same weeds it's always grown, just under a new label. So guard what you allow into your mind as carefully as you'd guard the front door of your house. Think about that comparison for a second. Most of you would never let a stranger walk uninvited into your home and rearrange your furniture, eat your food, and influence your children. You'd stop them at the door. Yet so many of us leave the door to our mind wide open all day long, to negativity, to gossip, to hours of content that adds nothing to our life, to voices that quietly convince us to stay small. If you wouldn't let it into your house, why are you letting it into your head? The books you read, the people you surround yourself with, the conversations you engage in, all of it is either building you up or quietly tearing you down. There is no neutral input. Everything you allow near your mind is doing one of two things every single day: constructing the person you're trying to become, or slowly dismantling them one thought at a time. This is why the company you keep matters so much more than people like to admit. You cannot spend your days surrounded by people who mock ambition and expect to stay ambitious yourself. You cannot fill your evenings with complaint and negativity and expect to wake up optimistic. Influence is not something that happens occasionally. It happens constantly, quietly, whether you're paying attention to it or not. If you want a different life, you need different inputs. This is not complicated, but it is uncomfortable, because it often means having harder conversations, walking away from familiar circles, and replacing comfortable habits with challenging ones. It might mean trading an hour of mindless scrolling for an hour of reading that stretches you. It might mean spending less time with people who only want to talk about the past and more time around people who are actively building a future. None of this is about arrogance or abandoning people you love. It's about protecting the one asset that determines everything else in your life, your thinking. And here's the promise I want to leave you with. Change your circle, change your reading, change your daily conversation with yourself, and I promise you, your outer world will begin to rearrange itself to match your inner world. This is not wishful thinking. This is how transformation has always worked for every person who has ever rebuilt their life from the inside out. Your circumstances are simply an outward reflection of your inward thinking, playing out in real time. So if you want to see your life shift, don't start with your circumstances. Start with your mind. Everything else follows from there. And finally, let me leave you with this. None of what we've discussed today matters unless you take action, and not tomorrow, not Monday, not when I feel ready. I want to be very direct with you about this because this is the exact point where most people quietly lose everything they just gained. They hear a message like this one, they feel something stir inside them, they nod along, they even get a little emotional, and then they walk out of the room and go right back to exactly what they were doing before. Nothing changes because nothing was actually done. Inspiration without action is just entertainment. It feels good for an hour and evaporates by dinner. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is closed by decisions, not by wishes. Wishing is passive. Wishing lets you feel like you're participating in your own future while actually doing nothing to build it. Deciding is different. A decision has weight to it. A decision says, starting today, something is different, and I am the one who made it different. You can wish for a better life for the next 20 years and end up in the exact same place. But one real decision, acted on today, can change the entire direction of the next 20 years. That's the difference between a wish and a decision. One is a dream you're hoping happens to you, and the other is a choice you're making happen for yourself. Now, I know what happens in moments like this. People start thinking about the size of the change they want to make, and it overwhelms them. They think about the whole staircase, every step between where they stand today and the version of themselves they're dreaming about, and the sheer height of it paralyzes them before they even lift a foot. So let me free you from that trap right now. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. You simply need the courage to place your foot on the step directly in front of you. That's it. That's the entire secret that so many books and seminars make sound complicated. You don't need the whole plan. You need the next right action. Think about it this way. Nobody who ever built something meaningful could see the entire staircase when they started. The successful business owner didn't have the whole plan mapped out on day one. The person who transformed their health didn't know exactly how the next 5 years would unfold. They simply committed to the step in front of them, and then, once they were standing on that step, a new step became visible that they couldn't have seen from the bottom. That's how growth reveals itself. It doesn't show you the whole path up front because if it did, most people would be too intimidated to ever begin. It only shows you enough to take the next step, and that is always enough. So here's my challenge to you, and I want you to take this seriously, not as a nice suggestion you'll consider later, but as an assignment you complete before today ends. Walk out of this room and do one thing, just one, that your future self will thank you for. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be impressive to anyone else watching. It simply needs to be real. Make the call you've been avoiding. Write the first page. End the habit that's been quietly costing you your future. Send the message that finally sets a boundary you've needed for years. One action today, because here's what I want you to understand as we close. The moment you take that first action, you are no longer dreaming about a reset. You are no longer talking about restarting your journey. You are no longer simply hoping to refocus your mind. You are living it right now in real time. And once you've lived it once, even in one small way, you will know beyond any doubt that you are capable of living it again tomorrow and the day after that, for as long as you choose to keep deciding. Now, let's start here. Life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. I need you to understand this distinction clearly because it is the foundation everything else we've talked about today is built on. So many people are sitting somewhere in their life right now waiting for the economy to shift, waiting for the right relationship to appear, waiting for a boss to finally notice their effort, waiting for some external force to rearrange the pieces of their life into something better. And they call this waiting patience, when really it's often just fear wearing a more comfortable disguise. Most people are waiting for their circumstances to improve before they decide to improve themselves. Listen to how backwards that actually is. They say, when things get easier, I'll get serious. When I have more time, I'll start exercising. When I have more money, I'll start being generous. When I feel more confident, I'll finally speak up. But here's the problem with that thinking. The easier circumstances they're waiting for rarely arrive on their own. And even if they did arrive, a person who hasn't developed the discipline, the mindset, or the character to handle them well would likely squander them anyway. Opportunity handed to an unprepared person doesn't produce success. It usually just produces a bigger, more visible failure. So today, I want you to flip that thinking on its head completely. You don't wait for the storm to pass to become a stronger sailor. You become a stronger sailor so that when the storm comes, and it will come, storms always come, it doesn't sink you. This is such an important shift in perspective. The goal was never to arrange your life so that difficulty never touches you. That's not realistic, and frankly, it's not even desirable, because difficulty is where strength is forged. The goal is to become someone capable of handling difficulty when it inevitably arrives, so that instead of being destroyed by it, you're simply developed by it. Now, here's what I want you to really absorb about resetting your life. It doesn't mean erasing your past, and it never has. So many people avoid the idea of a reset because they think it requires pretending none of it happened, disowning the years that got them here, acting as though their history is something to be embarrassed by. That's not a reset. That's denial, and denial never built anyone a better future. A true reset means something entirely different. It means refusing to let your past write your future. Your past gets a vote in who you were. It does not get a vote in who you're about to become unless you hand it that power yourself. Every single one of you sitting here has the ability right now in this exact moment to draw a clear line and say, everything before this was preparation and everything after this is purpose. Think about how liberating that sentence actually is. It doesn't ask you to forget the hard seasons. It asks you to reframe them. That job that didn't work out, preparation. That relationship that taught you what you'll never tolerate again, preparation. That failure that embarrassed you at the time, preparation. None of it was wasted as long as you're willing to let it serve the purpose that's coming next, instead of letting it define the ceiling you never rise above. This is the real meaning behind change over chance. Chance says, maybe things will get better. Change says, I'm going to make things better, starting with myself, starting today. Chance is passive and hopeful. Change is active and deliberate. And the moment you stop hoping for better circumstances and start becoming a better version of yourself, you'll find something remarkable happens. The circumstances you were waiting on begin to shift too, not because luck finally arrived, but because a changed person notices doors that a waiting person walks right past. So let's bring this all together, because everything I've shared with you today was never meant to be 6 separate ideas. It was meant to be one single truth viewed from 6 different angles. Life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. That's where we began, and that's the soil everything else was planted in. You are not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. Every failure, every setback already paid for and sitting in your account, waiting to be spent wisely instead of wasted in regret. Discipline is what carries you on the days motivation doesn't show up, because success was never a lightning bolt. It was always simple actions, repeated with stubborn consistency, quietly compounding into a life people will one day call a miracle, when really it was just math. Your mind is the soil for all of it. And what you plant there, the books, the people, the conversations you allow near it, determines whether your outer life ever has a chance of matching the future you say you want. And none of it, not one word of it, means anything at all without the final piece. Action, taken today, not someday. Closing the gap between where you stand and where you're capable of going. Here's what I want you to carry out of this room, more than any single sentence I've spoken. Your life is not asking you for perfection. It is not asking you to have the whole staircase figured out before you take a step. It is not asking you to erase your past or apologize for the years it took you to get here. It is only asking you one question, and it is asking you this question right now in this moment before you stand up from your seat. Are you willing to decide? Not wish, not hope, not wait. Decide. Because somewhere out there is a version of you 5 years from now looking back at today. And that version of you is either going to thank you for the decision you made in this room or quietly wonder why you let one more day slip by unchanged. You get to choose which one of those futures you're walking toward. Not next year, not next week, today. So reset what needs to be reset. Restart what's been sitting dormant far too long. Refocus that mind of yours on the life you were actually built for, not the one you've simply settled into. The past is closed. It served its purpose. But the next page is still blank. And the pen has been in your hand this entire time. Go write something worthy of it.